So, welcome back to Basic Mods. What we've done so far, if you've watched some of the other videos, we installed the wiring harness on the space behind me. We also did a drop D or a base extender from Hipshot. What you can see now is what you might notice is I've already gone ahead and installed the DiMarzio Ultra Jazz is in that. I did not film that one. That one took me a little bit longer, but it was a success. It was relatively easy also. And I didn't film because we're going to do something a bit different today. Right now I think ChatGPT is pretty popular. Everybody knows about AI and all that stuff. I thought, what would ChatGPT tell me to do if I asked it to wire up or to create like a wiring harness for this bass? So I asked it, and it told me. It also then gave me a wiring diagram to follow. And drum roll, here's what it looks like. Yeah, so we're not going to use that wiring diagram, but it did give some interesting advice. We're going to create the wiring diagram, or the wiring harness rather, that ChatGPT mentioned for this space. So today we're going to do some soldering. We're going to put together a wiring diagram. It's going to be a mix of sources, but the basic parts that I'm using for this are all from Amazon. Different 250K, 500K pots. Don't ask me, I don't know anything about it. I'm also making it up as I go. And we're going to see if this is a success or a massive failure. Yeah, but let's give it a shot. So here are the parts that I got from Amazon, the pots, audio jack, also a tone cap. If you're interested in exactly what ChatGPT told me, you can pause the video here. It gives the reasoning, the exact kind of equipment, but that's what we're going to use. And let's get into it. So here I'm starting with the tone. I get real confident real fast. So as I was doing this, I was like, I'm not so bad. And I think if we were to actually compare this to something that I soldered when I first started messing around with this stuff, especially these kind of dots on the top, right, preparing it, I think it was a little bit fast, but I would use like a Brillo pad now to scrape the tops of the pots to make sure that it can adhere. That's something I learned through trial and error, that sometimes you have to make it a little bit rough for the solder to adhere so it doesn't just kind of slip off the bottom of the pot. The wiring diagrams that I'm using for this are a mix of one that I found online that has a blend pot as part of the setup, and then also the actual wiring diagram from DiMarzio. The wiring diagram from DiMarzio doesn't have a blend as part of the setup, and I would prefer to have a blend here, so that's why we have to use the additional one. But really, if we compared them, I'll put the links in the description. They're basically the same, aside from that blend pot as opposed to two volume pots. Yeah. Here we're using the spare parts of the tone cap, the extra kind of legs, because it's rather long to blend to ground the two lugs to the bottom of the pots here. Something that I saw other people do that I thought was a good idea, as opposed to like having to bend the whole lug back because it can snap, but not always. I've also done it the other way and didn't snap, but I thought I'd try it like this. Here we start to get into putting the grounds on. I've done the leads. I did the main ground, or actually I haven't done the main ground yet. I've done the main audio out, this long white one on the right hand side, and also wired up to the middle pot. But here's when I save the ground for last, because here's where it starts to get a bit dicey. My hands are quite big, so it's kind of hard sometimes to get into these little spots and to get it to stick. And this soldering iron, I don't know what the hell's going on with it. I'm gonna have to get a new soldering iron, because it will work sometimes it won't work. I don't know. If I'm doing something wrong, feel free to let me know in the comments. I'm doing my best here. Here was my smart solution for realizing I ran out of black wire when I was supposed to extend the ground, so I just used a Sharpie and made the white wire black. Yeah, I was trying to be creative. I didn't want to use a different type of wire. I had this kind of set of the vintage pullback cloth wire that's easier to work with. Then I pulled out some old jazz pickups, and I figured, yeah, why don't I wire it up before I install it or do anything else, and I can actually already test it to see if it's working. Uh, yeah, spoiler alert, it didn't work at first, and I had to figure it out. It turned out, actually, it was because of these wonderful metal clip things that are actually holding up this control plate. They were shorting out or grounding the entire plate, which made it not work. So I was a little bit frustrated, but I figured it out eventually. I noticed that I was kind of like moving it back and forth, and it would work, and then it wouldn't work. And then I realized when I pulled it out of the clip, everything was fine. So it was, I don't know, there was one additional ground, I think too many, and that's what was causing it. Yeah, here you can see I made a total mess of this whole wiring thing. Yeah, that's something I need to practice on. Like when you get these nice wiring harnesses that are already wired up, they look so nice, but it's really difficult to do that, I guess, without practice. But now we're going to go ahead and we're going to install it. So we're going to take out the wiring harness that I had installed already. It's still great. There's nothing wrong with it, and I can always put it back in, but we're just going to swap it out because we want to try it. So that's fairly easy. I installed this thing on the bottom. You see on the left-hand side, this kind of ground plate thing with wires. This has been such a headache. Like, it comes off, it touches other things. One of the wires disconnected here at one point here when I was trying to put it back in, and it was just like a whole side thing. I don't know. I was trying that out as a new way of doing the ground here, because I did that in the Charvel when I swapped out the preamp, and it was super easy. But there's more space in the back cavity of the Charvel to work with, so I mean that's part of it. Here you can start to see, like, I made such a mess of this wiring and the setup here. Not ideal. And it starts to make it difficult to kind of put everything back together. But eventually I did. I had to add some additional nuts on top because the shafts of the pots were a bit too long, and I felt like, yeah, I might as well just do it now. So I added some additional nuts and then the washers in order to put it back into the control cavity, or the control plate rather. Now I'm putting it in, and I'm realizing that the tone cap is a pain. I decided to test it also here quickly with these pickups, and it was working just fine. There was no problem with it, but that tone cap was getting in the way. Again, because this cavity is super small. Especially, I think, even in comparison to something like a P bass or something else with a front control plate or a regular jazz bass. This one felt extremely, or like extra narrow. And here's where I started fiddling around with that stupid grounding lug that was such a pain in the... Pardon my French, I'll bleep that out. Yeah, so I'm bending now the tone cap up a bit. I'm putting back the grounding lug, and now I'm putting it all back together. And we're going to test it again, of course. Test, because we don't want to have to take it apart a million times. And so far, so good. And that's about it. We're going to put everything back together, and I'll catch up with you in just a sec. Okay, there we are. It's already installed. It's working, which is great. Let's just play it. I'm not going to do a lot of talking. Let's just go ahead and play it with a random backing track. Here we go.